Well, we are fortunate enough to be talking to Bonnie Rost right now, and I have been looking forward to this for a long time. Bonnie is one of the most interesting and accomplished women in our part of the world, and at least a part of those accomplishments had to do with the Navy Nurse Corps. Hello there, Bonnie. How are you?
Good morning.
Delighted to have you with us.
Thank you.
Bonnie, you were in the service in what years?
I served between the Korean War and the Vietnam War. Basically, 1956 is when I went into the reserves, and I went into active duty in 1957.
Yes, well, we served about the same time. We were both between wars, as a matter of fact. When you went into, how did it end up that you were in the Navy Nurse Corps? How did that happen?
Well, I always wanted to go into the service. My brother was at Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked, and he was there. He was in the war for the whole war. He didn't get out to 1946. He served in the South Pacific, Saipan, and so forth. And I guess I kind of grew up with his history. And then one day I was at Virginia Beach and looking out there at the ships out there, and I thought, I got to do that. I got to join the Navy.
So it had to be the Navy.
Right. Oh, I did think I was going to join the Marines as a nurse, but they sent me to the office down the hall with the Navy.
The Marines didn't want to hear from you.
Well, they instructed me that the Navy takes care of the Marines for their medical care.
Well, I have a picture of you as in that period of time. I was looking at it just a few moments ago, and I must say, just like my Aunt Christine, who went into the Navy in World War II, I asked her if she would tell me honestly why it was the Navy, and she said it was the uniform.
Well, yes, it was very nice looking, and you really had to be slim to wear it, too.
Yes, in both cases, that's right. Well, you were in the service then, and I'd like to talk about that service period and what that experience was for you. Of course, you'd been around hospitals, from the time you were in high school, weren't you?
Yes, I began when I was 16. I really tried to get a job in the hospital as a nurse's aide when I was 13, but since I was tall, I thought I could pass for 16, but they knew better. So finally, I was hired at Spears Hospital in Dayton, Kentucky, because I am a Kentuckian originally.
Indeed.
And so my last 2 years of high school, I got a job working 48 hours a week, second shift.
48 hours a week and going to school.
Plus going to full-time high school. That was the only way I could do it because there was just my mother and I, and my father had left us, and if I was going to do it, I had to do it by myself.
And that's exactly what you did.
Yes, with God's help.
Yes, and eventually some other help as well.
Right.
Let's talk about the nurses' training itself. Where was that?
Jewish Hospital in Cincinnati.
And how long a course was it at that time?
At that time, it was 3 years. And then, of course, I went to the University of Cincinnati part-time after that, to evening college, working on my degree. And then the Navy called me to come on to active duty, so I did not get to finish my degree work.
That's one thing I didn't know. Now you're in the Navy. Where did they send you first?
I was sent to St. Albans, New York. That's where they sent the nurses for officer training. That's where we learned to march, and we had Marine drill sergeants. I had one I liked and one I didn't like.
That sounds about right. Some of them could be a little crusty, couldn't it?
Yes,
So you did the close order drill and learned that kind of military discipline.
Right.
How long did that take?
That was about a 5-week course. And, of course, that was in January and February, which was a cold time up in New York. We had about 14 inches of snow.
That got your full attention, didn't it?
And, of course, we had to walk about 5 blocks to get to the mess hall. So by the time you walked through 14 inches of snow to get to the mess hall and back, you used up all of your calories.
It keeps you slim, doesn't it?
Yes.
Now, you were up there how long again at St. Albans?
I was up there. It was a 5-week indoctrination for Navy Nurse Corps officers.
So now you're already a nurse, obviously, so you know how to do that. Where do they send you?
We could request various places, and of course, if the Navy could send you, they would do that. They were very nice. But they were sending a lot of the nurses home that had served in Korea that were stationed in San Diego. So I was one of the nurses sent out to San Diego, which was a nice duty station.
You bet.
But we were quite busy when I was out there.
Tell me what kinds of medicine were being, I'm using the wrong term there. Who were you working with at that point? What were your patient load like?
Well, there were times on night duty that I was in charge of about 6 to 8 wards, sometimes 2 buildings plus intensive care. We had what was called the downhill wards, which were a number of the barrack-style buildings that many of the older veterans would be familiar with. And, of course, at night I would have to make my rounds from one place to the other, make sure everything was going right. And I really relied on my senior corpsman to keep me informed.
So this was a supervisory role as much as anything at that point?
Yes.
Now, the patients there, all service or some dependents as well?
It varied. They were mostly service, but we had veterans that came there. Also, we had dependents, newborn nursery, preemie nursery, anything referring to the dependents. And so the Navy would require that the junior nurses got a chance to work on each ward because they said that in case of war, a Navy nurse has to be able to take care of anything. So we were rotated every month.
Oh, was that a good practice?
I think it was. It took a while to get used to it, but and then I worked on the urology ward several times, and that was interesting because the second or third time I came back, my corpsmen thought they were going to play tricks on me. They thought I was new to the department, which I was not. So that was interesting.
You also had a couple of other experiences Little Bird told me about. What was this about all these love notes? Tell me about that.
Oh, yes. I was going to have a corpsman transferred to my department, and I had a very active ward. Really required that the people there really worked. We couldn't have any loafers. And I was going to get a young man who was, I believe was Filipino, and a nurse friend of mine said, "Oh, he is the laziest person on 2 legs." Well, I could not afford to waste one of my corpsmen. The Navy did not assign those people to me to waste. So I took him around, I showed him everything on the ward, everything that was expected of him, and he became one of my best corpsmen. But the thing was, I began finding little love notes on my desk when I'd come in the morning, and I found out who was doing it and called him aside, and I said, no, this will not do.
No romance with the corpsman.
No romance, no.
But he turned out to be a very good corpsman.
He was one of my best. I had veterans on my ward also, and they told me that he was my best corpsman, but he just needed a little bit of help. And like I said, my feeling was that you don't waste one person that's assigned to you.
Well, and that of course is, I would imagine, obtained all the way through your career.
Yes,
You're still in the service. There was something about a Christmas tree that Pat told me. What was that?
Oh, do I dare tell that?
Oh, of course you do. We're friends.
Yes, I was in charge of 2 urology wards, and I came in. It was Monday after the weekend off, and of course it was during the month of December, Christmas month. And my corpsmen met me at the door, and they practically took me by the hand to lead me back to the service room. And they had something to show me, and when I turned into the service room, there was a Christmas tree decorated with about 200 catheters hanging on it. And of course, I'm afraid I burst their balloon because the first thing I said was, "Do you realize that is U.S. taxpayers' money that is paying for those?" And of course, they looked a little shocked that I said that.
They were hoping you would be shocked into silence.
Of course, I was smiling about it, but I had to still remain as dignified as possible as a Navy nurse.
You were. When did you actually leave service then?
I left in late August of '58.
You were really. It seems to me, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems to me you were really affected by your time in service. Would that be fair to say?
Well, I had dreams about it many, many times. I often dream that I can't get the work done, that it's I need more help getting it finished and things like that. But
how was it different from civilian nursing?
Well, quite different because we used to have the corpsman call out the names of some of our patients to come out and board a bus to go up to the main building to get their x-rays. You don't usually see this in civilian hospitals. And I had mostly men to work with. I did work with Corps Waves, but we did a lot as far as teaching the corpsmen. And you asked me about if there were things that affected me. We did have some very nice corpsmen that later on I saw their names on the Vietnam Wall. And of course the tears just flowed instantly.
And still do occasionally.
Yes, yes.
When you see that Vietnam Wall again, that if that doesn't move you, then you are made of the same kind of stone.
Yes.
You got out of service again when?
Late 58, yes.
Late?
I served during the time of Beirut. We were sending our troops into Beirut, Lebanon, and of course the public has forgotten about that, or else I don't know what they knew, because when you're busy doing your job, you don't know what the public knows. But we were kind of thinking it might be the beginning of World War III, and there was a lot of concern. All leaves and liberties were canceled. And even if you were due to get out of the service had to know exactly where you were stopping on your way home.
You know, it's amazing. Crisis to crisis, we forget the previous one. That one, you're absolutely right. President Eisenhower sent 5,000 troops into Lebanon. We never even talk about that. We think that the Middle East crisis apparently blew up overnight, and that, of course, is not true. We have a long history there as well.
Well, I worked with contage, syphilis, and gonorrhea. I was in that type of ward at the time, and plus other infections. And I received a call from one of the executive officers on a carrier, and he wanted a certain patient released right away. They had to get their ship out. And this young man was filled with boils, and I said, "No, sir, you can't have him." He said, "Let me talk to your captain." So I put the captain on. He said, "No, sir, you can't have him. You can't put someone on a ship with 5,000 men that's filled with boils."
And that would seem to be common sense, wouldn't it?
Well, it was to us. I don't know.
When you were separated from service, you did not end your interest in the service.
No,
And before we get even to that point, we've got to let romance enter this. We have to let romance enter this story because it's very interesting. Where did you meet the man you were to marry?
I met him at church at Walnut Hills Avondale Methodist Church. We belonged to a young singles group when I was an RN.
And this was before the service?
Before the service, yes.
But you became engaged, if I understand it, while you were in uniform.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
Take us through that process. Tell us how that happened.
Well, I had always prayed about the person I would marry because I came from a broken home and I've seen a lot of broken marriages. And so I was praying about the right person when that person came along, and all of a sudden all of my 10 requirements came together with this gentleman and his family. So I arranged to come home on leave 11 months later, and came home on leave, and 2 of my bridesmaids were Navy nurses. They got leave to come home. And then I had to, after my honeymoon, I went back to San Diego. I waved goodbye to my husband standing there at the airport, and I flew off.
So it was the reversal of what we saw in the movies.
Yes, very unusual at that time.
As a matter of fact, so unusual that there was a newspaper photographer there, wasn't there?
Yes, and of course they printed this all in my wedding announcement.
That's wonderful.
Bride returns to finish enlistment with U.S. Navy.
And you were still there until when?
I was there till late August.
So that would have been late August of 58,
58, yes.
And now you became very interested, after you left, in women in the military and their history and perhaps the lack of attention that they had gotten historically from their country. Would that be fair to say?
Well, for a long time, my main interest was in, we had 3 daughters, and my interest was in raising those 3 girls. I was called constantly, and I received letters from Washington during Vietnam that if I was called back, would I serve in a VA hospital, a civilian hospital, or return to the military? Now, if you had children, you were not allowed to be in the military at the time I left. But, of course, things all changed. So I had to fill out papers constantly and send back to Washington. They were very close to drafting nurses during the Vietnam War. I don't know if the public was aware of that.
I was not aware.
And then I was called and asked to call Washington on a certain weekend that they would train me in the Vietnamese language and also in the system that the Vietnamese use in caring for the sick and wounded, because our system is much different here than it was over there.
There have been all kinds of television programs like China Beach. We see that, quite dramatic, obviously. But it was apparent that medicine was, once again, in sometimes almost primitive conditions in some of the areas. Would that
Very
be fair?
much, yes. And, of course, when the Navy nurses came in there, they would try to set things up with the conditions that we knew were right.
And eventually that did obtain, that did occur, I would assume.
Yes, I just spoke at the Vietnam Wall that was at Arlington Cemetery last weekend, and I did a lot of research on what happened with the Navy nurses during that time.
And they did obviously great work.
Yes, they did. Outstanding. Yes.
You had a great deal to do with, you would not say that, let me say that. You had a great deal to do with the Women in Military Service for America Memorial at Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. In fact, when you stand and look at that memorial, you can see the home place of Arlington right over it, can't you, right
Yes.
above there, the old Robert E. Lee home place there.
Yes,
Tell me how long it took all of you to get that done.
Well, of course, Congress gave their approval, not the money, but the approval in 1986. And then, of course, it took a while to get things organized. I joined the Women in Military Service organization in 1992. I received a call from my daughter in Florida, and nothing was said around this area about it. Nothing at all. So she said, "Mom, did you know about this memorial?" Well, I called the telephone number, and when they sent me the information, they were also asking for a volunteer, if you would be a volunteer field representative. And I did. I thought, well, I can do it.
You're not doing anything else.
I mean, I was one of those opposite people in the Navy. If they were asking for volunteers, I usually volunteered, because I find that you find so many more things interesting if you volunteer for things.
And that's what you did.
And that's what I did.
You
I
became
said,
a
"I can
field
do it."
representative.
Yes.
Did that involve fundraising?
Oh, yes, definitely. And also talking to the public. And as you know, I've been on the air here several different times with Don Herman.
Indeed.
But yes, we go around. We've been down at the Museum Center. In fact, we're going to be down there the weekend before Veterans Day. That'll be the 9th and the 10th. And then I go to the library over in Covington, different places. Actually, I've spoken all over from Cincinnati to Cleveland in various areas about it, and trying to get people to donate money towards it. We sold commemorative coins. We have various items that people can send for from the memorial.
Tell me about the progress of it. When was it begun?
It was begun 5 years ago today, on October the 18th in 1997. And, of course, I was in Washington not only for the dedication, but for the groundbreaking, which was all very fantastic.
What happens when one goes to the Women in Military Service for America Memorial? What can I find there? I have two close relatives who were in the service, women who were in the service. What will I find there?
If the woman herself, or if any of the family members have sent in her information, there's a computerized database that you punch in the name of the person, and it comes up with a picture of the individual in uniform if she has sent it in. If no one has sent it in, it won't be there.
So whatever they contribute will be synthesized and put into the system.
Yes. And I spoke to General Vaught, who is our CEO, about 2 weeks ago. Many times she answers the phone when I call Washington. And she said, "Tell the women to get signed up." She said, "If they don't have the $25, tell them, don't worry about it. let's get their histories in here. Let's get their names.
The money will be taken care of. Huh?
Yes,
Well, let's talk about that then. If there is a woman out there who served her country, she needs to get her information and a picture.
Yes.
2, do you have a number or address?
Yes, I do. I'll give the telephone numbers first in case they can call. This is easier to write down quickly.
Sure.
It's a toll-free number. It's 1-800-222-2294. And then I have another telephone number, which is 703-533-1155.
And you can call either of those numbers. That one is in Virginia. I forgot. I didn't hear the
They
other.
both go to Women in Military Service America Memorial. Yes.
Great. And whoever answers the phone will indeed be able to give you the information as to how to get that material there.
Yes, absolutely. And I have the address,
Mm-hmm.
Women in Military Service for America Memorial, or WIMSA, if it would be easier. Department 560, Washington, D.C., 20042-0560.
Well, we'll do that one again. We'll get that in there again. In the meantime, something else really quite remarkable happened in the year 2000. Because of your service and because of also your dedication following your service, you were inducted into the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame in the year 2. You're in the class of 2000.
Yes,
right?
that's right.
Well, tell me how you found out that was going to happen to you.
Well, the year before, several people had approached me, and I turned them down because I really feel like this is for people more outstanding than me. I just did not feel that I was worthy to be taken into something like that.
Everybody says that, you know. Each person who is asked says that same thing.
So the next year they approached me again about sending in my biography, and I thought, well, all right, I'll do it, but it was the very last thing on my mind because I was helping my husband with the state reunion for the Ohio LST Association. He is an officer with that association. So we were planning a reunion here in Cincinnati for the state. So I took care of all the typing and everything for that, and I put my biography as the very last thing to send in. And begrudgingly, because I still did not feel like I was worthy to do this.
Well, obviously they thought you were wrong because I see your name right there with that class among the people. You made notes for me here. I didn't realize that, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Otto F. Appel?
Apel?
Apel.
Yes.
Apel Jr. is the one who wrote the book on MASH.
Yes, he did, and he assisted with the MASH programs out in California.
Well, that's wonderful. I have a friend who is a doctor in our community whose name is John Bester, and John was a MASH surgeon in Korea during that period of time.
Yes,
so
that's what Dr. Apel did.
When I'm looking at all of these things that you have done, it is charter member, field representative, as we pointed out, former member of the Governor's Advisory Committee on Women Veterans, member of the Management Assistance Council, VA Healthcare System of Ohio, member of the Navy Nurse Corps Association, Reserve Officers Association, AMVETS, post number 1963. University of Cincinnati, and associate member of the Korean War Veterans Association. You underlined associate.
Associate, yes, as the wife of a Korean War veteran. I can't be a full member because I did not serve during Korea.
And supporter of the American Heritage Association and protection of the environment and wildlife. All these are important to you.
Yes.
And you, as you have pointed out to us earlier, give all your credit to God, to your mother, and to someone else.
My husband.
Your husband served in the Korean era.
Yes, he did.
On an LST?
Yes,
Well, I've been talking to many folks who served on the LSTs. Some of them loved them, but it was tough love. They said they were kind of round bottom and not very seaworthy.
Yes, they bounced on the water.
Apparently so. Well, I'm going to have to talk to him about that in another of our segments here. As you look back. First of all, I would also like to thank you very much. These calendars, are they available as well?
Yes, every year our organization puts out a calendar pertaining to women in the military.
It's a special Women's Memorial 2002 special edition calendar for the Women's Memorial. And as I opened it up and as I glanced here through the days, and it's very attractive, has some great information about women who served. And I keep turning the pages, and it seems to me that there is someone here that I recognize. I think there's a picture of you.
Yes, they pulled it out of the archives.
Well, it's a wonderful picture, and the thing that I don't like about it, however, is that it says 1908.
Yes, that's the year that the Navy Nurse Corps Association was established.
I want them to know for sure that was not you in 1908.
No, hardly.
Well, it's a wonderful, wonderful calendar, and these are available for sale as well, huh?
Yes, yes, people can order them from Washington. And once you become a member, they send out communications letting you know that they're going to be coming out.
Describe for me, if you would, I don't want to take up all your time here today, but describe for me, if you would, the ceremony in which you were inducted into the Ohio Hall of Fame, the Veterans Hall of Fame.
It was very impressive. We were called to the Veterans Memorial Hall up in Columbus, and of course they gave us our own spots to sit on the stage. Governor Taft was there. There was a chorus out there of about 50 or 60 school children. It was all very patriotic, very military-like. About 500, 600 veterans were there. And, of course, the people from our various organizations who knew us came up there to support us. If I could say one thing, I don't want people to forget our Navy corpsmen are the best in the world. And I just can't say enough for our Navy corpsmen. These were young men that went through about 10 or 12 weeks of training, and then, of course, they worked with the nurses. We instructed them in caring for patients and so forth. But never for a minute do I want anyone to forget that these were the young men that went on the beaches with the Marines. They carried very little with them, maybe just a handgun next to them. And they went out there and braved everything in order to take care of the wounded. And I do want them to be remembered.
Corpsman. Heard that often in descriptions of the great battles of the Pacific.
Yes.
Everybody calling for a corpsman, and they showed up.
They did.
The medal itself is remarkable. It is very impressive. I've seen only two others like it. Each is personalized, isn't it?
Yes, it has our name and a number on the back. And of course, when we pass on, no one else can wear it.
It's yours.
I inquired, well, what happens to it after we have worn it? And they said, well, you can be buried with it, you can turn it back in, or your family can just keep it, but no one else can wear it.
You can frame it and put it on the wall, perhaps.
Yes,
that would be allowed.
Yes.
Now, your husband and you have been married now 43?
43 years.
And tell me again the family. How many?
I have 3 daughters. They're all married.
And
none of them became nurses.
Not one. I'm not surprised. That's the way it happens sometimes.
And 2 lovely granddaughters that go to Fairfield schools.
And you're obviously still active with the family very much. So do you and your husband get to travel much?
Yes, I just attended the Navy Nurse Corps Association reunion. We went to Alaska in May. There were over, about 830 Navy nurses and their guests.
So a great deal of your travel, both of you, has to do with some military reunions and military memorials. Huh?
Yes, and we had 6 Navy Nurse Corps admirals.
Oh, my goodness.
The very first female admiral, Admiral Dirk, Aline Dirk, is also a member of the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame. And she was the first female in the Navy to become an admiral. And she's a very good friend of mine.
Well, yeah, that's a pretty good corps of nurses, I would say.
Yes.
That's quite remarkable.
Yes.
I want to thank you, first of all, for your service to your country. Second of all, for talking to us today. You look back on that little girl who at 13 wanted to be a nurse, and then at 16 was indeed working 48 hours as an aide to nurse. I know it seems to you, it must seem to you as it does to me, we're doubtless the same age. Looking back there, It seems a very long time ago. What do you think of your choices back then, now? How do you feel now about the choices you made back then?
There was nothing else I could do. I also went to business school in between the 8th grade and ninth grade because I was bored with time, and my mother worked it out for me to attend business school, so I took the typing and business English and all that during the summer, and I made up to 60 words a minute without a mistake in between the 8th and ninth grade. But I could not see myself sitting at a desk typing all the time, although I really admire the people who do that, but I just couldn't do that. I had to seek out a more adventuresome career. I wanted to serve. There's so many people that are in need, and I wanted to serve.
Serve both people and your country, as it turned out.
Yes.
And your brother was an inspiration.
Yes, he was. Yes.
Well, it's a remarkable career, which of course continues now with all of your activities. And again, I want to thank you for your service to your country and for talking to me today.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
This is a wonderful one. We're going to have a very fine segment on this, all in the company of heroes. Americans at war.
I began when I was 16, and so my last 2 years of high school, I got a job working 48 hours a week, second shift, plus going to full-time high school.
No one had to teach Bonnie Rost a work ethic, nor did they have to teach her that caring for people was a noble profession. She always knew that. And there was something else. Bonnie knew how important it was to serve her country.
Well, I always wanted to go into the service. My brother was at Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked. He was in the war for the whole war. He didn't get out to 1946. He served in the South Pacific. And I guess I kind of grew up with his history. And then one day I was at Virginia Beach and looking out there at the ships, and I thought, I got to do that. I got to join the Navy.
So it had to be the Navy.
Oh, I did think I was going to join the Marines as a nurse, but they sent me to the office down the hall with the Navy. They instructed me that the Navy takes care of the Marines for their medical care.
Let's talk about the nurses' training itself. Where was that?
Jewish Hospital in Cincinnati. At that time, it was 3 years. And then, of course, I went to University of Cincinnati part-time after that, to evening college, working on my degree. And then the Navy called me to come on to active duty, so I did not get to finish my degree work.
Now, you're in the Navy. Where did they send you first?
I was sent to St. Albans, New York. That's where they sent the nurses for officer training. That's where we learned to march, and we had Marine drill sergeants. I had one I liked and one I didn't like.
Some of them could be a little crusty, couldn't they?
Yes,
So you did the close order drill and learned that kind of military discipline.
Right.
How long did that take?
That was about a 5-week course.
So now you're already a nurse, obviously, so you know how
Yes.
to do that. Where do they send you?
We could request various places. They were sending a lot of the nurses home that had served in Korea that were stationed in San Diego. So I was one of the nurses sent out to San Diego, but we were quite busy when I was out there.
Tell me, who were you working with at that point?
I was in charge of about 6 to 8 wards, sometimes 2 buildings plus intensive care. I really relied on my senior corpsman to keep me informed.
You also had a couple of other experiences Little Bird told me about. What was this about all these love notes? Tell me about that.
I was going to have a corpsman transferred to my department, and I had a very active ward. And a nurse friend of mine said, "Oh, he is the laziest person on 2 legs." Well, I could not afford to waste one of my corpsmen. So I took him around. I showed him everything on the ward, everything that was expected of him. And he became one of my best corpsmen. But the thing was, I began finding little love notes on my desk when I'd come in the morning. And I found out who was doing it and called him aside. And I said, no, this will not do. If I could say one thing, I don't want people to forget our Navy corpsmen are the best in the world. And I do want them to be remembered.
The service of Bonnie Rost to her country by no means ended when she left the Navy. With incredible energy and dedication, she balanced family, profession, and continued commitment to the military, past and present. You had a great deal to do with the Women in Military Service for America Memorial at Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C.
I joined the Women in Military Service organization in 1992. So I was in Washington not only for the dedication, but for the groundbreaking.
For this, and so much more, Bonnie Rost was inducted into the Ohio Veterans Hall of Fame in the year 2000. This is Nick Clooney in the company of heroes.